It's 9 o'clock, so we will call the meeting to order. First, we'll welcome Dave Parnin back. He's back on the board after having served many years in the past and as an officer as well. And I also note that Vani is excused today. She's not able to be with us. The first order of business is the nomination and election of officers. You have attached a copy of the minutes of the nominating committee meeting. And I would like to, on behalf of the committee, present a slate that includes 2 of the offices. The committee is recommending me for the chair and Beth to be reappointed as secretary. The vice chair position, we've had no recommendation from the committee because they wanted to present that option to the full board for discussion. And there are 2 ways to handle this. One would be to first handle the slate that's been presented and then have a discussion and nominations for the vice chair. Does anyone have a preference?
I would have the preference to do the slate first and then have a discussion.
Is that a motion?
Motion. Yeah.
Okay.
I would move to do that.
Is there a support?
Support.
Any discussion? Okay, we will then have a roll call vote on the 2 officer positions in the slate.
Director Bunce? Yes. Director Parnin? Director Van Hoven?
Yes.
Director Wick? Oh, she's not here yet, sorry. Director Savage?
Yes.
Director Duff?
Yes.
Director Dritzma?
Yes.
Director Rhodey?
Yes.
Director Faulkner?
Yes.
Director Davis?
Yes.
Chair Bird?
Yes, motion passes. The next order of business would be consideration of nominations for the vice chair. If the board would prefer to have a discussion first, we can do that and then entertain nominations from the floor.
I'd like to have discussion. Okay. And that's a motion to have a discussion.
Great.
Oh, and I'll just start by saying that I would rather not do it again this time because there's some other things I need to concentrate on. So put that out there. Mhm.
So do we start discussion or?
Certainly.
Okay. I spent the afternoon with Claude yesterday and I really have been concerned about potential conflicts of interest as we transition from a department to an authority, given that we have commissioners on the board that have dual fiduciary responsibilities. And this is not to say that in any way I question anybody's integrity at all. I think people have served this board well and done things very well. We ran into this issue in the LRE and almost had a significant issue in regards to board members from other counties aligning against the LRE with a potential RFP thing. So I'm heightened to the issues as it regards to that. I looked at both the mental health code and our bylaws. Our bylaws have not been updated since 2010. There is no indication of any conflict of interest provision in that bylaw. Also, the mental health code says a few things about conflict of interest, but usually mostly about employees or people who work for agencies. So it's a floor in regards to that. What I would suggest is that during this transition period, there are potentially dual roles that without anyone's intent, they could find themselves in. And I think the board needs to be protected from that by having a review of our bylaws and to look at a conflict of interest resolution so that the board could consider that going forward. So with that in mind, I really do believe that I believe we hired an attorney for the transition. It would be helpful for that attorney to really look at any potential conflicts of interest that the board might have. I think that protects the board, and I think it protects anybody who either, not only commissioners, but even maybe LRE members who might have potential conflicts of interest. I certainly do not want to encourage any litigious aspects as we go through this transition. I will contrast that with having heard from Beth and Tom and Sylvia. I do believe that we need to have consistency in our leadership going forward, right? I think that's important to do that. So again, this isn't about anybody in particular. It's really more about looking at the fiduciary responsibilities and areas of conflict that might happen. So I don't know that I need to make that into a motion, or just, does that need to just be in the record? My comments.
Michael,
We already, as a board last month, said once we had the slate of officers and we could form an executive committee, that we would already do a bylaw review.
Good.
And that we would then have the full board look at some of that work, because they haven't been updated for a while. I mean, there are things like, I'm still called a certain title in there, or
Right.
those things. There are provisions in the mental health code that obviously address conflict of interest for board members, that you have to claim it, those things. But I'm in full support. And you as a board have already agreed to, once we had a slate of officers and we kind of had this organizational meeting, that we can begin, as part of the authority transition, a formal review of our bylaws. I intend to use Miller Johnson to help us with that, even though most of it is, it's just ensuring certain things are in there. So I think that the board is already taken some consideration of what you're actually recommending.
Okay.
And just my opinion about conflicts related to fiscal responsibility, that is an interesting thing when you said it, because we're making decisions right now as part of the transition process with the county on things like unfunded liability for MERS and things like that. And I didn't think of that could put a county commissioner on this particular body at the county commission. I know they can sort it out, kind of like, well, how do we deal with this? And when I do an update on the transition, you'll see what I'm meaning. But I just wanted to let Director Davis know that I believe that we can do a process that acknowledges your concern, and pretty quickly, within a month or two, have a product for everybody to look at, because we need to do a formal review of our bylaws anyways. And I want to do that annually moving forward as part of the process, just double checking we don't have to change anything.
Good.
So I would offer that comment.
And I would say, I really appreciate that. And I'd appreciate having the attorney look at it. I actually found that Claude made an error yesterday, and Claude was quite contrite and apologetic and promised to work with me better going forward. So I think an attorney would be helpful. I think relying on AI for too much is.
Oh, I didn't know who Claude was. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm going,
Okay.
Claude.
Yeah.
I would jump in here. I understand what you're saying about dual fiduciary responsibility. I think we have to be careful, because what you're talking about, like restricting commissioners or even, LRE members from serving in leadership roles, is probably illegal. MCL does set out specific set aside spots for county commissioners on CMH boards, whether they're an authority or a department. I would argue that was intentional, because the dual fiduciary responsibility is not a detriment, it's an advantage, right? That's why you have county commissioners on the board. So, I mean, we can consult an attorney about it, but I think we got to be very careful about that idea. Same thing with the LRE. I mean, the LRE is definitionally made up of members who have dual fiduciary responsibility. Maybe that's an issue with it, but that's how it is. So, yeah, we can ask, but I would rather not put that in a draft.
Right. Well, maybe some guidelines for recusal would be helpful.
I don't think that would apply either.
And
even for votes.
And I agree with you, Jordan. I think it's a dual hat that we just wear. And I think it's very possible to do both well. Doesn't mean it wouldn't be hard, but it is legal. And
Mhm.
so I agree with you. And yeah, so I don't think there should be any restrictions. I think that it's definitely appropriate for people to have opinions about that and to
Mhm.
choose to do something different, you know? But I agree. I don't think it's a legal thing.
And I would just say, in anticipation of this discussion, I'm not aware of any authority that has any such restrictions.
Mhm.
Are you aware of authorities that have county commissioners on their board as officers?
Yes.
Leave it almost every single one.
And in some cases, the majority, the chair is the county commissioner. So I don't think there's any inherent, I mean, the system has been set up like that way. However, we should just be cautious and aware of things, right?
Mm.
But I'm not aware of any authority that restricts officers based on the type of CMH board member they are, county commissioner, consumer. And I think I think it's better suited for you as a board to have that discussion among yourselves of who you'd want to serve. But there are no known restrictions that I'm aware of. There are potential conflicts all the time, but I think we can sort those out with legal opinion. But
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any authorities that would do that, like say you couldn't be if. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but I'm not aware of any.
I appreciate the discussion, and I'm satisfied with the fact that the board is already going to look at the bylaws. I think the bylaws need to be updated anyhow. It's been since 2010, so I appreciate the discussion. Thanks.
Any other comments relative to the position of officers?
So does that mean we have to appoint another commissioner on the board? I mean, if you
No.
don't do it, one is enough? I mean,
Oh, well, I'm not stepping down from this board. I'm just
right,
not
but I'm just curious if,
No, you don't have to.
so you don't have to?
No.
We're by law allotted up to 4, I think.
Okay,
We can have 4, we can have 0.
okay, all right.
Serve on the board. And it's not compulsory to have a commissioner serve in any leadership role.
Okay.
Jordan, did you say you can't have 0?
I believe you can have 0.
I think so. That's correct.
Yeah.
Mhm. And there are, as I understand it, there are some authorities with no county commissioners on them.
Okay, very few, but yes. And we have some counties that have board members been on it for 40 years. No limits.
Did you say 40?
Yeah.
0, yeah.
Wow. Boy,
Commitment.
Mhm.
Okay, are we ready for nominations now for the vice chair position?
Sylvia, would you reconsider?
No, I would rather not.
Okay. I would nominate Dave.
I second that nomination.
Okay, seconds are not required for nominations, but are there any other nominations?
I don't know if she wants it, but I would nominate Donna Bunce.
Thanks, but no thanks. Life is just too full right now.
Are there any other nominations? I think by tradition, we ask 3 times. Are there any other nominations? And are there any other nominations? Then we have one nominee for the vice chair position, Dave Parnane. Are you willing to serve, Dave?
Pressure's on.
Uh-huh.
Sure. Yes.
And let's do a voice vote so it's recorded.
Director Parnan.
Yes.
Director Rhodey,
Yes.
Director Fockler,
Yes.
Director Davis,
Yes.
Director Duff,
Yes.
Director Druidsma,
Yes.
Director Van Hoven, Director Savage,
Yes.
Director Bunce,
Yes.
Chair Bird.
Yes. And the motion carries. Congratulations to, we will adjourn the organizational meeting and convene our regular board meeting. Again, note for the record, Vonnie has an excused absence. If you join me for an invocation. Heavenly Father, we recognize you as the Lord, the creator of the universe. We pray that you would give your blessing on our meeting today as we meet to deliberate on actions and activities that affect the people in our community who we serve every day. We thank you for an opportunity to reach out and walk side by side with them and support them in whatever area of life they need. Give us wisdom and patience, and we ask this in Christ's name. Amen. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance if you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our mission statement and our vision statement are included in the copies of the minutes. You're probably all familiar with them. And we read them ourselves every month as a reminder of what we are here to do. We'll open the floor for public comment. Please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes and let us know your name and your area of residence.
Good morning, Barbara Lee from the City of Grand Haven and the Momentum Center, where we are creating a community where every person is fully visible and connected. And as you know, we do that by operating CMH's social rec, extended grace social rec program for people with mental illness, addictions, and disabilities. Costs $1 to be a member, and then you can participate in all of the behavioral health outings and activities we offer. But we also address the social determinants of health. We don't use any millage dollars for that, but we believe if we're not reaching out into the community and addressing the reasons that our members are so often marginalized, then we're doing a disservice to the very people we're trying to help. So a couple of events that I want to tell you about and invite you to. One is this Monday, we have a town hall on mental health practices. There will be a licensed behavioral therapist there, a yoga therapist, somebody who will talk about emotional freedom technique, a lot of different mental health practices that can be helpful to anybody. So that's open to the public on Monday night. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Every Friday, we have Free Food Friday where people can get a hot meal, use the shower and the laundry facilities in Grand Haven. But the second Friday of every month, we show a movie. And for May, we're showing the movie Words on a Bathroom Wall. It's a powerful movie about a teenager with schizophrenia. As a mother of a child with schizophrenia, I cried a lot when I was screening this movie, but I really appreciated the very genuine and compassionate way that it treats that diagnosis and how it emphasizes the need for human connection. So our free movie, free dinner, and then movie on May 8th. I want to invite you to that. And then finally, Prom with a Purpose. That's coming up May 15th. And that is not just a fundraiser. It really is about social interaction. And I wanted to mention that this isn't a dance for our members. It's a dance for the community, and our members are part of it. So they don't feel that the spotlight is on them. They just feel seen and like they belong. And when you belong, when you feel like you really belong in community, everything changes, not just for a night, but for a lifetime. So I want to invite you to come to the prom, be part of that. I'm going to leave brochures here. Please consider attending these events and consider this my personal invitation to join me at the prom.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak?
Nobody with their hand raised.
Okay, And we will move on to our first order of business, the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Or,
Any discussion? And all those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent items, we are looking for a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved?
support.
Any discussion of the consent items? If not, we'll do roll call since there are financial issues.
Director Duff,
Yes.
Director Dritzma,
Yes.
Director Bunce,
Yes.
Director Rhodey,
Yes.
Director Parnan, Director Davis,
Yes.
Director Van Hoven,
Yes.
Director Savage,
Yes.
Director Faulkner,
Yes.
Chair Bird.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is committee reports. The Finance Committee, Vani is not with us today, but Sylvia is going to be presenting the report for the Finance Committee.
Yep, so I was not able to make it, but I watched it a couple of times online and Bonnie has graciously provided some notes for us. So okay, so the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic, CCBHC, there's no update. We'll have more information next month. On the authority transition update, the CFO position has been posted, and this role is needed in the early stages of becoming an authority. So additional updates will be given today by Dr. Brashears. On the mental health millage, all of the one-time millage contracts are to expire on April 30 of this year. Utilizing already budgeted millage funds, these contracts will be extended through the end of fiscal year ending on 9/30 of 26, which will prevent an interruption in services. Aligning all millage funded programs on a fiscal year calendar is the goal. The CMHOC budget reduction plan, there will be an update today. New business, the specialized residential system sustainability, immediate stabilization needs, and proposed use of county millage funds. We are keenly aware of the funding crisis and specialized residential finance. We have also shared with all of you the work that Dr. Brashears and staff have done to establish rates based on need. This effort has gone beyond Ottawa County to the region. While CMHOC rate structure has been approved and implemented with new residents, the region has not yet settled on a rate. Additionally, in our county rates for existing residents have not been adjusted. So this brings some facilities to an extreme crisis point. In order to prevent failure to the system, we may need to use already budgeted millage dollars to sustain these homes until the region reaches a decision on rate setting. And then on our county wage study update, I'm sure we'll hear more today too, but Dr. Brashears reported the recent wage study was presented to the Board of Commissioners before CMH had an opportunity to fully review the findings. Afterwards, CMH conducted a detailed assessment and it was noted that all non-union positions slated for wage increases were approved while union adjustments will need to be negotiated. The proposed changes carry an estimated $500,000 budget impact and will directly influence upcoming union negotiations, cost of living discussions, and future compensation as CMH moves towards authority status. The April amended, renewed, and ending service contracts, we discussed and approved the 11 contracts, which we just went through today. So I think that's about it.
Yeah,
And
I
then if
can-
any other members had anything that they want to share from that.
I think I appreciate the situation that's happening in residential treatment. And I think, Michael, you'll talk a little bit more about that in your report. May have some comments I might want to make at that time.
I can update it on that now. So I sat here for, I don't know, 9 months in a row, saying I will not use millage dollars for Medicaid residential services. And this doesn't do that. What I'm doing is using already budgeted millage for non-Medicaid expenditures while the region determines if they're going to implement the regional rate framework. In fact, the region has a meeting next week on the 29th with MDHHS to talk about the Lakeshore Regional Entities residential rate framework. The regional administration are in full support of the model. It's based on our model. So what I've asked providers to do on the non-Medicaid side, expenditures that they're not able to cover through other funding sources that they use, SSDI and things like that, to give me a sense of what their need is. And then we're going to look at assisting them so that we can buy a month or two at time without having imminent closures or severe disruption in our network. We've done a lot the last 20 months on our network. We established a new level of care system. We developed rates that were agreed upon between providers. We started the implementation of these new rates for all new people. We had some emergency funding last year for one provider that has 30 residents, and we increased our rates up to 10% this year already. So we started moving the rates up, but I've been hesitant to go all the way of what our rate structure would suggest if the region's about to implement a whole system. So in working with the region, I'm looking at, is this going to be a reality? If it's not, then we'll continue the increasing of the rates for our folks based on agreed upon cost of care. So this infusion of millage was in the budget. It's not allocated at the moment until this came up. So it's not requiring new millage to come from, say, our fund balance. We have a fund balance millage over here. So I'm gathering information from the providers this week of who is in need of immediate assistance on non-Medicaid expenditures. And non-Medicaid expenditures has anything to do with their staffing or the services we provide. It's more facility cost, room and board, transportation issues, things that Medicaid doesn't cover. We have some providers that are fundraising up to 40% of their budget just to stay afloat. And that's a really high percentage. And so what I'll be doing is collecting that information and then informing the board what our intentions are with the money that's already been budgeted. So it doesn't require new funds, and it does not increase our Medicaid deficit at all. So it's one of those things where I've been trying for the longest time to avoid any use of millage for specialized residential, because I believe the majority of the issue is on the Medicaid side. We've done a lot of work, but we may have to assist some providers so that they don't begin the downward spiral of not being able to meet the service. I met with the providers last week at this time. I asked them, and I'm requesting some information be sent to me, and I'll be looking at it. But to me, the fundamental issue is that the state, the region, the way we disperse Medicaid in a region doesn't lend itself to a needs-based model for specialized residential, but we have movement in all of them. At the last LRE meeting, the CEO acknowledged that they are looking, due to Bob Davis's request, the evaluation of moving to a needs-based model of reimbursement, to evaluate it, not to implement it, evaluate it. I want to be very clear. And at the state level, there are meetings set up to do that as well. So here's what this wouldn't do. We would not be funding a home where other residents that are not part of Ottawa County are in. We're going to have to identify only our clients and the cost associated with that. So millage can't be used for people not in our county. Okay. And so I'm looking at Director Duff, because he sent me an email, and I'm assuring you that's not at all part of the strategy. It isn't, oh, just send money to a provider, use it anywhere you can to benefit everybody in that home. We will be looking at the individual client level in respect to their placement for assistance. And so we'll be tailored to that. And you'll have a full report of what the assistance looks like and how we're going to do that. So that was one of your concerns you had. when you were watching it, and then emailing. So that's what that is. And I can answer questions on that because that was probably the largest discussion point. The other one that you presented was extending our one-time millage programs. We had talked about that last month as well. This was just the actual contract amendments to do that. Again, that was money that was budgeted already. It doesn't require new millage to come in and do it. We were planning to do that this year, in anticipating of the millage being on the ballot and to not disrupt those services like the Y that you just saw last month and other programs that we have to get them to the beginning of the fiscal year. I outlined the plan last time we met to get everybody on equal footing. And so that we're not having different kind of seasons of groups of millage programs needing to be renewed through the year.
Michael, both you and I have a bit of a bird's eye view of what's going on at the region.
Mhm.
We are already, you're authorized to raise the rates.
Right.
Whenever you need to raise the
Right.
rates. I feel a little more optimistic given what the last report was.
Mhm.
At some point, I think Dave, you, myself, and Michael, if we feel that this is not moving along quickly enough, we have to determine, like, when do we make the decision to end it?
Yeah,
When do we make the decision that we're going to kind of do it on our own?
right.
And I know that puts you in a difficult situation, but I'm also very, very, I'm very concerned that if in fact we just drip along and drip along and drip along, that the difficulties just increase more and more. I think you've done a great job in terms of trying to address the issue. I'm fairly new on the LRE, but I also have seen passivity on that board before, and they're listening, and I do believe that we have their attention now. The question is how do we get it to the next?
Yeah, the LRE administrative staff and the staff that are all for it.
Yeah.
My viewpoint, this point, until there's a regional framework, there's not a regional framework.
Right.
And I think there's enough momentum for me to buy 30 days of that. If we don't get any sense of like, okay, this is something that is gonna happen, we're gonna have to move internally. But, you know, you're trying to do things as a partnership within all of the CMHs in the region. It's been an effort to try to move us all together, but there's momentum on this. But I've waited 10 months to do what I've already needed to do. And so I don't want to increase our Medicaid deficit in a dramatic fashion. So I'm keeping an eye on that, obviously, and what's in reserve. But if we don't get a sense within the next 30 days, I'm going to have to act, or we're just going to be kicking the can to next year, the same thing. And we've already started to move on this gradually. So the impact to our current Medicaid deficit isn't as severe as when we started, because we already started doing something like this. And I estimate that I would have to increase our budgets around 600,000 to get us all the way. So I'm just trying to do that without increasing our risk on the Medicaid side. And if we can use the region to help us, great. But I'm going to have to act because eventually here, but I'm encouraged, and I want to be very clear that the Lakeshore Regional entity is in full support in moving in that direction. It's us as members trying to make sure that we can get this done. And we want the state to say, you're in the right area code. And that meeting is happening on the 29th of April. So I have more in my director's report, but it was a finance committee thing that had the most conversation.
Appreciate it.
So it would be good to do it here.
Couple of other comments that were mentioned during the finance committee about this issue. We have some providers who are teetering precariously relative to their finances. And a 10-month delay on your part of being able to implement it is complemented by a 10-month delay on the provider's side from not getting the relief they really need.
Correct.
So I think there is urgency here.
Mhm.
We need to protect our system of delivery. The other issue, Paul, the comment you brought up, I thought was valid. We have to be careful we don't use millage money that's generated by residents of Ottawa County to benefit residents from another county who may be living in specialized residential here. Some of our providers have residents from 2 or 3 or 4 different counties in their facility. So that's an area that you need to pay particular attention to because, we certainly and actually, the irony is some of those counties are providing more in terms of a daily rate than we are.
Right.
So, are they subsidizing our provider here in Ottawa County? It's
On the Medicaid side, for
Yeah.
sure.
so it's a sticky wicket, as they
It
say.
is.
Mhm.
I think with the millage campaign coming up, we need to highlight that exact.
Yeah, and
going
just to
forward.
remind the board,
Yeah.
I've used a very methodical process over a long period of time. We had to rebuild the residential level of care system with our partners, determine cost of care, do the analysis, and we got to a point where we were ready, and I kind of stopped, right? Of course, we had a deficit. I had to be cognizant of that. But we're now ready. It's like, okay, we're here, but we didn't rush into this. I mean, I declared my first meeting as an interim director, I declared a residential emergency that day. We've been making progress ever since. We just haven't completed it. And by the way, we've been able to address other contractual issues, not just residential, outpatient therapy and some other stuff that we've been doing. But we have to do it slowly and methodically on that. So I have more later, but
Well, while we're talking finances, we did recommend to the board the finance report for the month.
Mhm.
It might not hurt to refresh everybody's memory as to the ISF fund. My understanding is it 5% of total?
it could be
Medicaid?
up to 7%.
Mhm.
The regional entity can hold up to 7% in ISF, General Service Fund, AKA Rainy Day Fund, right?
Mhm.
We have not been successfully, as a region, been able to save up to 7% because we keep utilizing it. And we haven't had enough increase in rates to get it up there. In fact, the Lakeshore Regional Entity did an analysis and they're saying, based on their actuarial review, we should really have an 11% ISF of the total revenue in the region to deal with unanticipated increases in expenditures, but we're not there. Now, currently, there's enough money in the ISF to fund all of the projected deficits that we have, Network 180 has, Allegan has, projected annually for this fiscal year and some of next fiscal year. We're going to be in trouble as a region in terms of the Internal Service Fund in the middle of next year if we don't find strategies to reduce expenditures or get more revenue in from the state, which we're all aggressively doing. But we do have money in the ISF to cover the projected deficits that the boards are suggesting they are. Network 180 has a large one. We have one. Allegan has one. And besides Muskegon, everybody else is kind of like close to having one. Muskegon is projecting a surplus this year, which would go to the pool and be spread out to all of us before the ISF is used. So if any CMH has a surplus, they don't get to keep it. It goes into like the kitty, and that's used first before the Internal Service Fund's used. And so as we're still closing out last year, we have some of those massaging going on. But the Internal Service Fund has been our safety net in dealing with our Medicaid deficit, and it's our money, to be clear. It's not, oh, that's what it's there for. And that's why I've been taking aggressive and methodical steps to address the fundamental causes of our deficit. And I'll talk about that more in a moment.
Thank you. Any other questions about finances? And then we'll move on to the next item.
Okay, I think that's me, right? Okay, a couple of things. Wage study. So It was reported, I reported in Finance Committee, that the county has completed the wage study for the employees. And the recommendations of the study went to the Finance Committee at the County Commissioners. And it's subject for full vote coming up, I think, next week or something like that, right? In that wage study, the recommendation was to accept Baker Tilly's, that's the group that did it, recommendations for kind of resetting the pay scales and grades for certain positions. But it did have an essential feature in the recommendation that if positions in the wage study are union positions, that would be subject to union negotiation, and meaning don't automatically implement the wage study recommendations for those positions, make it part of negotiations. The CMH contract, we extended it for a year. We have to have a new bargaining agreement in January. So in December, we'll be doing that process. And it's my intent to take those wage study results, because I will be the principal negotiator for this contract, not the county, because at that point, we're transitioning to an authority. And our team would look at that with labor to say, all right, as part of the total compensation package, how do we negotiate? So there are other options. The county could just say implement it for everybody outside of union negotiations. They could do that. But they have recommendations from administration to, and to the full county commission to actually implement it non-union and then address union employees' results there. I've did a rough calculation. I don't have all of the raw numbers yet, and it's close to a $500,000 impact to us, meaning that our wages and kind of the structure of our steps would have to increase by that much to meet the full conditions of the wage study. So I'm still in the analysis of the results to double check that. And we'll obviously give reports to you. But I'm having an all-staff meeting with our staff before the county commissioner meeting so that I can tell them what's going on. I've been sending out emails and those types of things, but I think it's important that they can ask me questions directly before the county commissioners vote. And then once the county commissioners vote on what the implementation strategy will be, I will then send out information how I think that impacts us. Now, it's my belief as a CEO that if we have a legitimate wage study that says that we're not paying people at market rate, you take that seriously. I think it would be disastrous to say, hey, we're a new authority and we're not going to implement a wage study result that suggests that we're not even paying you correctly. I don't want to come out of the door that way as the CEO of the authority. But we have to really look at the impact of all of this to compensation for our CMH employees. So I'll take questions on that, but I'm just letting you know, my approach to this is to take the results that were done seriously and strongly consider them as we move into the authority. Because the last thing I want to do is come out of the gate as the authority and have people like, you're not even paying me market. So I'm going to look at that, make recommendations. You as a board will be involved in that. Part of the stuff for becoming, transitioning to some of the responsibilities from the county to here is I intend to bring to finance and to the full board, any position changes, compensation changes for you to be aware of as you're voting on budgets each year and as things come up. Because right now the county approves new positions within the budget that we have. That shifts to you once we're up and running as a full authority. So I'll take questions on the wage study. I thought there was good discussion at the county commission level. I think Baker Tilly did a good presentation. If you like regression math, then you'd love that report. But that's kind of what's being presented to them to view. And, the union has asked for a special conference with HR and myself next week just to talk about the wage study. Under the collective bargaining agreement, they can ask for a conference and just ask questions. So I'll be attending that next week as well.
I have a question. Is there a consideration of benefits in the wage study that has been done? Healthcare benefits?
No,
and
that's
other
not
things?
part of that.
So that's separate.
It's
Okay.
simply, well, not simply, listen to me. It's primarily focused on wage structure and the kind of like the steps and grade system we have.
Sure. Okay.
And are they market for these positions? And there's an appeal process.
So that'll be a different process.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So, but the wage study, I'll talk about in the authority update.
Yep.
I mean, the fringes.
And just some feedback on that. It has seemed like our extra compensation package is actually pretty generous in the county.
Mhm.
And I think that's often true of government structures. They
Sure.
do really well, with the extras, and sometimes the pay is a little less.
Mhm.
And I think that's certainly true here.
Good.
So
Hmm.
I do have a question. So one thing that some other people have raised is some of the more advanced or higher level positions have an eighth step, and that is being done away with. And so some of the feedback that I'm hearing from people is that it's going to put the people in that step in a stagnant pay situation.
Okay.
Like their pay won't be cut, but their pay also won't be increasing with cost of living and all of that until that
Right.
catches up with them. So, and that seems to be hitting our leaders more than others. So I'm just wondering, are you finding that's true in
Yeah, in
CMH?
the, yes, and in the wage study results, they're definitely, my biggest concern is wage compression among the ends, the front end and the back end. Luckily for us as an authority, we can address that.
Okay,
So when we're going through that, we can look at that and we have the ability over time to change the entire scale ourselves.
true.
And so the way I'm looking at that is in the case you're talking about, it's more like red circling, right? So they're stuck there. They can't, and they won't even get a COLA increase,
Right.
right? Well, we already know in some of the CMH positions, it's very difficult to get comparables.
Mhm.
Even in the wage study, it was very difficult because you would think in a public mental health system, people would be really willing to give you the information. Baker Tilly had to pull teeth to literally get comparables related to CMH positions. So some of the comparables were not even with the CMH system. So we're going to have to look at that seriously when we do this. To me, you want to make sure that people have opportunity for advancement, but if they advance and they get stuck and they get too far away from the norm, they leave.
Mhm.
And we've been blessed to have a lot of longevity at CMH, but we're going to keep a close eye on that in terms of red circling and COLAs. We will be able to address that as a board once we're an authority, independent of the county. And so we'll have different set of challenges, but it'll be more in our operational control to make decisions on how we want to deal with that.
Okay. Do you have, but I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you have like an estimated number of people that you think are affected by that specific thing?
I don't have an exact number, but I would imagine it's at least 10,
Okay,
but I'll look into it.
okay. All right. And so you are thinking that if this is implemented, it's probably not something that we can address as far as CMH goes until we're an authority.
Yes, and our plan with that, I'll just get into authority update.
Okay,
Okay. Our plan with that is we're looking at transitioning the employees to a January date, but having some operations done by October, like in fiscal services and other key departments, so that our employees are not going to have to get like 2 W-2s and all this other stuff. So all of those consideration, wage study, negotiations, the biggest impact to the authority status is to our employees. So we're being very careful not to try to rush to the fiscal year, even though it would make Diane very happy and Nick that everything was done by October 1. We're working hand in hand with fiscal services at issues related to employees, benefits, all that, a January 1 transition date. And we're looking, we have a process set up. We had a meeting this week with most of the major departments, with HR. When do we sit down with Gallagher, which is the group that does the insurance with it, and make sure we're part of the pool? So things are picking up right after spring break. So I would say our strategy is to make sure we don't move too quickly to be a freestanding authority, totally independent, with the employee aspect of it, and we're looking at a January date for that.
Okay.
For October, we're gonna have to have our own fiscal services, kind of like Munis system. We're gonna have to have a lot of things stood up by that. And I will tell you that my staff and the COO has been working really hard to make sure we have an exhaustive list of things that we want done by October versus things we want done in January. And that's moving along well. I did put an attachment in there in your packet of kind of other update issues. We have a CFO posted, but to be honest with you, we haven't had any applicants with overwhelming CMH experience. And my goal was to get a CFO with CMH experience to help us right now as we're transitioning and stand up that. And so I'm having to rethink the strategy and how I want to handle that position a little bit. And so it's sitting there. We have interviews set up coming up for some of the candidates that we have. But if you're a candidate and you're listening to this board meeting right now, what I would say to you is that we have very good financial people that have applied, for sure. But I was looking for somebody that actually had experience within the CMH system in Michigan to help with this. And so I'm not saying they're not qualified to be a CFO. What I am saying is that my original goal was to try to attract somebody. And so we've posted this position at the board associations, job bank, and things like that. The other decision that I just made that was indicated in this update is I am going to be posting a director of an HR department sooner than later. I'm finding that I'm needing to have an independent HR director that's directly under me to help with this transition and to help set us up for HR functions that are going to be independent of the county starting in January. So just so you know, if you see a posting for that, that's because I've decided we need to try to find that person now and not wait till December or January. We had great meetings with fiscal, hats off to Karen and the fiscal services department at the county. They've been 100%, all the departments have, but I'm just giving a special shout out because a lot of this impacts them. Fiscal has dedicated several people in their department to help with this transition. They've set up multiple meeting dates for us, checklists for us to do with them to ensure we don't miss stuff on this transition. And it is a lot of work that it's not like we, have a lot of extra people around. And remember, CMH has never managed directly anything related to fiscal services. So they're having to do a lot of the heavy lifting because that's where all the infrastructure is. But, our folks at CMH that for fiscal, or Karen, Nick, all of them, are all working overdrive answering questions on this. Diane, who's come in really on that. So I've been very happy with the level of cooperation and attention we're getting. The Deputy Director Administrator Brian has been leading point on the county. And boy, it's like herding cats, and he's good at it. And so I feel, as the CEO, very supported in this transition. We have a lot of tick lists we're going through, definite dates, and I'll have more of a written status report next month because it's kind of like we had spring break and then we kind of took off. But I listed some general things that we've been doing. So I would say the transition is going well, and it's complicated. We're trying to create something that's never been done before. We're trying to create an authority-county relationship that still utilizes some county functions under contract that makes sense. And we do certain things independently that we have to. And that's not been done before in this way. So we have an opportunity in this county to lead what a county authority relationship could look like when you're not trying to cause a lot of disruption to anything. And so at times that's challenging philosophically. We have to kind of remind ourselves that's what we're doing. So like if we have a county system we're already using, keep using it and we'll make a determining, like say like a payroll system, right? Keep doing that until maybe a year or two from now. Once we have our training wheels off of being an authority, we might make a different decision. So that's all going well in terms of the authority. I'll take any questions on authority status transition. I do include to have the board involved next month. I'm ready for you to look at bylaws and all those things.
Michael, I'm wondering anecdotally on your behalf, how are the staff doing? You know, I mean, this is like, whoa, a lot of significant
Yeah,
changes.
my staff are keeping their eye on the ball on what they're doing, but everybody's pensive. Like until you know what's going to happen and you're in it, it's hard to know. And so even if you update them and let folks know, you got to, a lot of the staff are in a wait and see where we're trusting it's going to be okay. And we're going to move in that direction. But I've been impressed in how much they're focusing on the care they're delivering. And we give them opportunities to ask questions. But, you know, I would think pensive is a word, like,
Yeah,
you know, kind of like trust, but let's verify.
right, right.
And so I think the leadership group is doing great, but everybody else, in a sense, they're not exactly sure where we are in the process. And so I intend to I have an all-staff meeting coming up to educate them where we're at with this and answer questions.
Okay. I just hope they sense our support towards them, you know, that we are looking at them. We do care about them, and whatever we need to do, we'll do.
Yes. Yeah, and I think this board has been saying that, and I think that I've been impressed with even the county's perspective on that, Dave. You know, all the meetings I'm at, the administrators like, we have to limit the impact
Sure.
to this. We have to do this methodically. And I'm in a weird position because technically we're still a county department in a lot of ways. And so how this transition goes, I can have a say, but it's not, you know, we're still waiting back to hear from the state of this change. The way that works, if the state never responds, they never respond to our resolutions and our filings and all that to become an authority, then the month that the county commissioners did that, the next year becomes automatic. So if we hear nothing from the state, then officially it would be February. But we can still put things in place before then. So I'm just letting the board know and the community know, if the state never responds, because they haven't had to deal with authority status thing in like over a decade, right? It automatically goes into effect the year after the county commissioners passed that resolution. So we're nudging, we're sending letters, we're doing that, but if we don't hear ultimately, it still takes effect. So that was on the authority.
Michael, one
Yeah.
follow-up comment. I think you addressed this in a previous meeting. You will be negotiating a new union contract
Correct.
effective January 1st of next year. That contract will be presented to our board and our board then approves it. So we'll be assuming additional responsibilities as
Yes.
a board that we have not had in the past.
Correct. And I intend, you know, starting next month to look at those changes to our process and start presenting them to you. And that would, you know, because that is a change. And, you know, we'll have to address that when it comes up. But, you know, just who's the principal negotiator? We're in a hybrid model right now. It's going to be CMH. We'll have legal as a part of it. Anna and I, our new HR director by then there to be the principal negotiator of the union contract. It will not be the county. It won't be county HR. Now, if they may be willing to provide clerical and technical support, which they've offered, like, yeah, we'll write up stuff for you and do this, but ultimately it shifts from the county to us, this contract. And of course, the staff could vote the union out at any time. So if, you know, I mean, that's also something for staff to consider. It doesn't bother me that there's a union, but I'm just saying that it's not, doesn't have to be a forever thing. Or it could be. Any questions on the authority? Again, full support from the county. Been very appreciative of the work that's going into this. A lot of extra hours from county staff, our staff. But it's working, well, in my opinion. Budget deficit reduction, I had a handout last time. I'm going to update it. One of the big things that happened in addressing our budget deficit reduction plan is I called for, and the region has implemented a process for universal utilization management guidelines for certain areas, community living supports, structure and self-directed care, autism services. Those groups are up and running, and we're looking for work product next month from those groups. What was impressive is that there was a strategic planning session at the LRE this week, and the top one of the top voted items for the region to focus on strategically is the development of uniform guidelines across the region. This is good news for Ottawa County because we will then have the guidelines to help shape how we authorize amount, scope, and duration and the amounts of services, still within a person-centered planning way, but what's allowable. Because right now I could say, Director Beth, you only get 50 of these things, and you say, I appeal it. And it goes where? To the region. So if the region doesn't have a uniform understanding of what's allowable and how we authorize services, they will either support or deny an appeal. And if they say, we support CMH, it goes to a law judge. We have too many decisions being made in terms of the amount, scope, and duration of services and what we authorize going to judges because we have a lack of uniform guidelines regionally. So this is an effort as part of our budget deficit reduction plan to get these parameters defined to see what really are the true cost of services and what we're authorizing. We've been doing that analysis, CMH, since I've been here. And we're ready to roll with impact statements. I've presented numerous documents to the committees on the cost of self-directed care versus CLA. So all that stuff is going into the region. And I think this is a really good opportunity. Things like autism services where we've had an increase in expenditures. Well, we were able to use a regional entities report comparing us to the other CMHs in the region. And lo and behold, we do some things differently from them that actually we have a higher instances of people getting authorized for autism services or diagnosed with autism than anyone in the region. In fact, 83% of people that seek diagnostics for autism get deemed to have autism and eligible for our services. We have CMHs in the region where that number is 47%. So why is that? Well, we don't do that internally. We have contract providers that we utilize that determine if somebody has autism and then tells us, like a third party. The CMHs that do that internally with their own guidelines, the instances is much lower. Now that could be good or bad, right? But we need to examine those. Not having something like a BCBA on staff. Ottawa County, $71 million organization, huge autism, doesn't have a board-certified behavior analyst on staff. We've been relying on contract providers. This is a mistake. So Katie Clausen that runs autism, myself and leadership, we're looking at 3 steps to kind of address that issue, which will help with controlling some of the eligibility and costs in autism. So you combine all of those efforts, and we're now at the point where we're getting regional guidance and assistance to help us control some of these expenditures. And it just takes a long time. But I think that's our best chance in dealing with unexpected or over expenditures, the things that we don't control. Like, how do you say no if there's no guideline to say no? How do you say yes if there's no guideline? And I don't want to rely just on a CMH only one, even though I have them ready to go. We're letting the region have a shot at this. If they don't do it, we'll have to implement our own and review it with folks. So on the revenue side, we've collected data and we've sent information to the state, as you know, that we have 17 people that are costing us $5 million. That is not in the rates. The department has received my data. They are reviewing my data, and we're set to have a meeting to talk about my data with them. We were going to have it a week ago, but they weren't ready because they hadn't reviewed my information. But that's getting traction. It's getting attention. We have many people at MDHS looking at our data and the stuff that we sent in to simply say, no CMH could cover these costs with the way that the rate structure is. And to the state's credit, they're not blowing us off. They're not going, oh, well, talk to your PHP. They're not doing that. They're literally saying, we have a fundamental issue we're going to have to look at because you're not the only one. So I'm continually putting pressure on increased revenue, even though I know the overall pie in the state is only so big. But when we're being held accountable for expenditures that are not even considered in the rates we're getting, that's to me the issue. And we're being very successful in getting that message heard. And I'm hopeful to have more of an update on that in the next board meeting. But that money alone, even if we got half of it, would pull us out of the majority of our deficit. So the budget deficit reduction strategy is addressing revenue gaps based on needs-based thinking, establishment of guidelines so that we can control amount, scope, and duration and understand the appeal process, not to deny service, but to be clear to people what is allowable, right? And it's also looking at controlling some of our own internal costs. We still have $1 million in positions that I need that I haven't filled, sitting there, right? Okay, and so until we absolutely have to have them, like danger, they're gonna be sitting there, but sooner or later I have to make a decision in those positions. Will they ever be filled or not? But it's sitting there. So items that we can control, a lot of it will gain with authority status, so we had to deal with that. Right now, I really had no control over wages, fringes, or benefits at all for our organization. I had input, but no control. So whatever the county authorized with good, sound reasoning, they're not just willy-nilly doing it, I really just had to take it. Administrative costs, the whole thing. So getting our house in order through the authority process and controlling expenditures, dealing with the guidelines to limit or to say what we can have for services, and dealing with revenue is the three-prong attack I've been using for the last 19 months. And we're making progress in all of those, but it takes time. I think I'm the only CMH that submits to the region a budget deficit reduction update in writing to the LRE. I have not seen that from the other, I'm not aware of, they may have sent emails, but I formally keep the LRE updated to our efforts here so they don't have to guess what we're doing. And in fact, I even sent it to the board meeting, the LRE members in the meeting Wednesday, like we were talking budget, I'm like, here's our plan. And I think the region appreciates that, that we're very transparent in what we're doing and we're trying to be partners.
And we'd like to see something from some of the other organizations.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we'll keep doing best practices and others can catch on. And they may be sending stuff. I'm not aware of it, right? But we're keeping track of that pretty closely. Any questions on what I was just saying?
Just a question / comment. You've said this before a couple of times. It just seems outrageous that 17 people and $5 million.
Yeah.
Does it have to, like, I don't
Well, see, the
understand.
thing is, if these are people that receive what we call, we created this level, enhanced health and safety, that have so many different needs that not all, but the majority of these folks need one-on-one people around the clock. We have one person 2-on-1 around the clock because they have no access to institutions, which we don't want them into institutions, but we're not getting compensated for the level of supports that they need. And the providers have been bearing the brunt of this. And so you can have rates that are so high because you need people around the clock or taking people in the community. Some of these people need 2 people with them, right?
Yep.
And so they are a different population for me. There's people in traditional specialized residential, then we have this. And I've gone out of my way to statistically prove, Donna, that they're different. They're not in the same grouping. So it's not like everybody like I've said, these people are fundamentally different and they need to be funded differently. And we took the time with IBH, our kind of analytic contract we have, and other folks to determine that they're a distinct population with really distinct needs and should not even be in the same conversation with folks in traditional specialized residential or at-home arrangements. And it's time we start looking at like that, because if not, we're like pitting one group against another, right? I won't do that. This is a distinct group that no one's funding. And we need to be funded for that, because I'm not going to stop the service.
Right.
I'm not going to say, oh, I'm not funded, good luck. We look at, Leah's in the audience today, my residential person, right? We're always looking at ways to remove one-on-one, to decrease the needs. I will not decrease those needs if the person's imminently at risk. Because sometimes the philosophy goes, well, if you remove the one-to-one, let's see how they do. Well, you better do that in a very controlled setting
Sure.
to protect the individual that we're serving. And so we're more methodical in that. We have meetings all the time with providers that are providing those enhanced health. When can we try certain things? They all have behavioral plans, those things. But it is this many people out of the thousands that we serve that are driving a large percentage of our budget and our deficit. And so I've been tackling that 17 months in a row, not 18, because I had to get some data for several months first. And so we're trying to address that in multiple layers. But that's the primary reason Ottawa County has a deficit, is caring for folks with high needs. Is the primary, not the only, cause of this.
Sure. Thanks for the deeper explanation.
Yeah, I'm breathing this all the time,
I have
but
a
it's
question.
important.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you see that population growing?
Yes. Why? People living longer and, quite frankly, lack of access to appropriate institutions at times. Institutions are not a dirty word. They should be used targeted for periods of time. And if you're an individual that has a developmental disability, you literally have no access to both local hospitals
Yep.
or state facilities. And that's a position statement from the department. That's not me making that up. And I know that, Director Duff that works for PHP knows what I'm talking about, right? The reality of the situation is we've created a level of care at the community level and didn't fund it. And so it's my job to get that funded. Why? Because those people need those services and they need us. That's our obligation. But gee, at what cost? $1,000 a day for some of these folks. $1,500 a day for some of these folks. That was the bulk of my update. I'll answer any other questions that people have. Thank you.
So we have a presentation next.
Yes. It's coming up.
Yes.
Good morning.
Everyone hear me? Okay, great. Thanks for having me this morning and giving me the opportunity to talk about the department that I am so grateful to oversee, and we do some really great things. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about what we do. So my name is Chelsea Clark. For those that don't know me, I'm the Director of Community Programs at CMH. And so essentially the overview of what my department does, I don't really like to use the word hodgepodge, but it really is. So I oversee our customer service department, community development, which I'll get into a little bit more detail, the grants, our housing programs, and our millage. This is a very high-level overview. I could spend hours getting into the nitty-gritty of each of them. So I think if you want more information, maybe I could be invited to a PQI meeting where I could go into a little bit more detail of each one. So let's meet the team. Myself, I'm the Director of Community Programs. Hadley, she's awesome. She's our program supervisor. So she oversees our CCBHC INA grant. She also helps me with demo compliance. And then she also is our new health and safety officer. So she's learning that role and the ins and outs of that. Sarah, she is our grant supervisor, and so she really works with the teams, making sure that applications are submitted, that budgets are reviewed, goals and objectives are met, really just kind of navigating between CMH and the grant platform, whatever that may be. Rodrigo, he's our health educator, and so he really leads the health and wellness groups that we have going on within the community and at CMH, and I'll explain that a little bit more. Max, he's our customer service specialist. He is our person that answers the phone. He answers emails. He really kind of creates any flyers or marketing materials. He helps me with grievances and appeals. He's kind of my right-hand man in terms of the customer service piece of my department. Kelly and Brittany, they are the faces of CMH as far as A building. So they are the ladies that you see as soon as you walk in. Really a rockin' team. They do awesome. They really support the whole organization, really quick to take on more tasks, which is awesome. Ashton, she is Sarah's assistant in terms of grants, and she's newer in her role, and so is that role. That role has just recently been created, and she's really taking the charge, learning about the grants and HUD. So small but mighty team, but we are awesome. Customer service, we're going to start there first. This is kind of just an overview, really from the tech requirements, but customer service is a lot. We orient folks to services. We really make sure that clients know what to expect, what kind of services we provide. We make sure that there's documentation, brochures, rack cards, guide to services. And we really just want folks to be well-informed, not just the folks that are receiving our services, but also the community as well. We work very closely with recipient rights. Our customer satisfaction survey is part of customer service. So that goes out annually, which we'll be reviewing at leadership. And I'm sure I could present that information to you guys as well at some point. We get a lot of inquiries via email or phone. And so we make sure that that gets to the right person. And then something that we hold quarterly is the Consumer Advisory Panel as well, which I wrote down the next date in case anyone is interested. It's June 8th at SOBAR. So the other big piece of customer service is grievances and appeals. And so we manage all grievances and appeals for the whole organization. And so it's a little bit confusing, and I don't know how much into the weeds you want me to get. But the LRE manages all non-CCBHC appeals. We are involved, we coordinate, I make sure the treatment teams are involved as necessary. But for CCBHC appeals, which we have not had any, knock on wood, we haven't had to do any yet, but that is all internal now, as of 10/1 of 25. We also make sure that staff are trained in notice of adverse benefit determination. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with that, but basically what that is the notice that's sent to clients that when a service is reduced, terminated, suspended, anything adverse that has happened to them, they get noticed. And there are certain requirements that have to be met in terms of like 6.9 reading level. We want to make sure that folks understand what's happening. And then also person-centered writing. We want you statements. We don't want, Joe is doing XYZ. So that's part of customer service as well. A new change is the negative action determination. That's essentially the CCBHC notice. Same kind of concept. So when the LRE pulled out of CCBHC, they needed a process to be able to notice folks and then be able to start that appeal process. So that is the NAD. And then, sorry, so then the other piece is the community events. Just as you'd assume customer service would do, we're out in the community, we're at events, we have the health fair coming up, May 18th from 3 to 5. And so we would love to be invited to really any event that you guys feel would be appropriate to be able to educate the community on the services that we provide. Max is awesome and flexible, loves doing it, so do I. And so we usually pair with Access as well, because who better to explain the services than Access? But we love to do it. I think since COVID, things are picking back up in the community in terms of what is what's out there, what people are hosting. So that is a big piece of customer service. And then we also manage our social media, our website. We really want to engage stakeholders. We want to engage community members. We create newsletters, so the Lakeshore Link that's sent out monthly, our staff newsletter, and then also our annual report comes out of customer service too. And then Dave, I know you had mentioned, how our staff are feeling. We really want to take on improving staff morale, making sure that there's opportunities for staff bonding. And so that also comes out of my department too. So community development also includes kind of CCBHC. It could be its own separate category, but from my perspective and what my role is, it's truly the compliance piece. So it's meeting the attestation, it's meeting the requirements. Sorry, I don't know what's happening in my voice. But I oversee essentially to make sure that we're in good standing with our CCBHC. It's a beast, it's a lot. And it really takes just myself. It takes the other directors, it takes my staff, it takes everything. So yeah. I kind of touched on this a little bit. So the health educator, Rodrigo, he's really doing some cool stuff. He's doing cardio drumming out in the community. He's doing Writers Anonymous. He's doing mindfulness. He's doing, oh gosh, walking groups. He's doing some really cool stuff out there. And so a good place for you to be able to see what's going on is we have it on our website. We also have newsletters where there's like kind of a snippet of what's happening. We have what's on the right. We have that at our front desk with like what's coming up this week. And so we've served, and this data is actually old because it's from our annual report from December, but we've served over 1,000 participants in his groups, which is really cool. Moving on to grants. So grants really help us bridge the gap in some of our funding. And so these are some of the, where our funding comes from. Thank you. Where our funding is coming from our grants. And so again, I could get into the weeds of grants. Hold on one second. Yeah, so this is many of our funding for our grants. We have just shy of $6 million in grant funding, which that's a lot. And it really provides us the opportunity to be more creative since Medicaid has a lot of red tape. So do grants as well, but I think it gives us more opportunity to be a little bit more nimble, a little bit more creative. And so Sarah and Ashton do a great job at being able to manage and, like I said, work with those teams to really maximize our grant funding at our department. A big piece of Sarah and Ashton's job, and they probably could attest to it's a very large piece of their job, is our housing programs. So HUD, or our permanent supportive housing, it's been a program that has been around for over 20 years. Yes, so it's been incredibly successful. It's housed many people over the decades. And as you can see, there are some requirements to be able to be eligible for PSH. But I have seen the impact that this has had on folks over the years. And truly, I think without that program, the homeless population in Holland would be far greater than what it is. And, it's just meeting our needs, which is amazing. So the other housing program is Consumer Residential Assistance Fund. And so this is a millage funded program that is available for CMH clients, and you can kind of see how it can be used for. I will say primarily that it's mostly used for security deposit or first month's rent, or if folks are behind. The purpose is really to prevent homelessness. In any case, there's some flexibility there. It's not as strict as HUD, but we want to make sure that folks have a good game plan. There's a cap of $3,000 per fiscal year for individuals. And you can see who primarily uses the funding. Shout out Khaled. I think he does a great job at being able to support the families he serves using the CRA fund. And I should also point out that HUD serves over 100 people in our community and keeps them housed. So,
Chelsea, this question for you.
yeah.
I know it's not under your control, but the PSH, that lists that it's 30% of the based on client's portion of the rent is based on 30% of their household gross income. Doesn't that seem high?
I mean, sure. I think Anna's our housing guru and has been part of this program since its conception. So,
national standard are anybody should be paying about 30% of their gross income towards rent and utility. So there's a rent calculation HUD has us use, and it really ends up being an affordable portion of rent and utilities for these folks to be able to pay. But it is a national standard. When we're doing the rent calculation, they do get a credit towards utilities. So, those funds should be going to pay their utilities.
and it does include everyone in the household, even if they are not a CMH client. So if grandma's living with you and Aunt Linda is living with you, it's both of their incomes if they have it. So,
Okay, thanks.
yeah. So moving on to millage. My position in millage, while Dr. Brashears kind of manages more of the financial piece, I'm more of that person that is meeting with the millage funded organizations. Over the last few years, Dr. Brashears has wanted to has added on more data reporting to be able to be more transparent with the community, to be able to be more effective with how impactful the millage has been over the last few years. And so that's been a new piece of oversight with millage, the educating and informing of the community, especially with the upcoming renewal, creating that material. Site visits, I see she's left, but there were a couple of why was here. I see extended grace is here. So just forming those relationships with millage funded programs has been wonderful. And really just coming up with better ways to be transparent with how the millage has impacted our community. So that's something that is within my department. And that's really it. That's my department in a very broad nutshell. I apologize for what was happening with my voice, but I will take any questions and I'm happy to come to PQI if you want to learn more. Cool.
Chelsea, thanks for that. I've been talking with you a lot about the millage. I feel like I'm really an annoyance to you now because I look at all that you're doing. And so I really appreciate all that effort. So.
Thank you.
Chelsea, I thought it was a great presentation. I really liked how you used your staff that had specific roles to explain, the big picture.
It's easy to do when you have a smaller team, and it's, my team is unique, we're not a treatment team, we're not a clinical team, but we very much work with the treatment and clinical teams, and everything that we do bleeds into what they do. And so I think it's just an imperative piece to CMH. It really helps a well-oiled machine become even more efficient and supportive to those that we serve. So I love my team. I think that they are wonderful. I think they do great work. What we do is hard. And sometimes I think because we're so hodgepodgey, we don't get as much of a shout out, but they do wonderful work.
Yeah.
And I couldn't obviously do what I do without them.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Right, there is no old business that we're aware of. New business, Michael, you're up again.
Yes, now that we have a slate of officers and we can move, I'm going to begin the process of outlining and recommending strategic planning. I've talked about this before, but now I think is the time. But I want to let the board know that, over the last, say, 8 or 9 months, I've been avoiding strategic planning because I didn't know like what the state was going to do or the authority status was going to do. I'm now at the position where I'm going to begin the strategic planning process with the board and with the staff, regardless of what's going on above us. I'm okay that I delayed it, but I'm probably about 8 or 9 months behind where I want to be from a strategic direction for our CMH with the board. But now that we know that at least the current risk of privatization might become, again, who knows, was thwarted, and we know we're going to be an authority, I think now is the time to look at that. And so what I'm going to do, and I already have it ready to go, I'm going to send it to you, and we can decide if we want, how we want to proceed with, does the executive committee want to look at it or the full board in terms of the process we're going to use for strategic planning, and then begin it. And it will have, obviously, times for us as a board to meet outside of the formal board structure through some formal strategic plan activities that some of them would be public, some of them wouldn't, just depending on the nature of what we're doing. So I'm going to put forward a strategic planning model for your consideration and feedback, and we can look at it. And I'm hoping next month we can say, yes, let's move, as a board, let's agree to that process. But I'm no longer going to try to mitigate all possible contingencies that are not in my control. And I think it was good to wait, but again, we could have been further along with certain aspects of things, but now I know we're going to be an authority. And now I know CMHs have to exist at least. So given that, there's no longer an existential crisis. So that's just the update on that I intend to do that. And we wanted to wait to who's going to be the chair and all that other stuff that we just did today. So it's a verbal update on that. One of the strategic plan items is something that I forgot to talk about in my director's report is the state's proposed changes in the mental health framework, where the relationship of what the health plans do for moderate mental illness and populations in the relationship to what we do as a CMH is really become even more blurry with the proposed framework from the state. It's my estimation that if the state moves forward, and I have a document that I'll send out that literally does an analysis of the framework and the threats to us. I'll send you out for your review. But the short thing, the highlights of it that from a strategic planning point of view that causes issues is that I believe we're going to have a collapse of the health plan provider network or clinicians that don't want to do the new tool requirements. So if you're in a health plan right now and you're a therapist, and now if you get Medicaid for those folks, the moderate groups, you're going to have to use some of the tools that we've had to use for years. And what I've already found out, I already had one meeting with one provider that said they already have panelists that are saying they're not going to take Medicaid people anymore starting in the state because they don't want to do these tools and we don't. And so I'm anticipating more people moving towards us because of the collapse of that. Now, I've expressed that feedback to the state. They asked for feedback. We put our feedback together, and it's not like they're not aware of the potential, but it is something for us to keep on top of. And So as the state moves forward to trying to clarify the roles of the health plans versus us for moderate mental health, we're keeping a close eye on that impact and letting the state know. And of course, they didn't implement or have any thinking of the impact of that to CCBHC, right? So CCBHC, you're supposed to be able to expand out to moderate populations. There's been no thinking of the impact of the framework to that. And so we're collecting all that information, and I'll send it out to for your review. But that's a strategic plan item of how do we navigate organizationally through those waters. So that's one of the platforms. Yep.
If that happens and a percentage of the population out there moves into the CCBHC to get services, we have the requirement to provide 51% of
Directly,
those
yes.
services. So that means we have to expand our capacity as well as our DCOs.
Correct. Thus why strategic planning on what's the impact of that, how that changes you organizationally is imperative. And so, yes, everybody's intentions are good, clarification, who does what, who pays for what. But you have a carve out system, which we are, and behavioral health system, and health plans, it's a carve in. And so it's hard to navigate those two realities at once. One of the reasons why the state wanted to restructure the system, right, to kind of fix that. But I anticipate more of a strain on us, not the other way around. The providers network for the health plans have no obligation to be providers. They can self-select that I'm not on that panel anymore. We don't have that option. So we're keeping a close eye on this, and our, the Board Association has a position on it. The state asked for feedback on it, so it's not like everybody's ignoring it. But I'm just bringing it to your attention is that that is a potential impact to us and could have more people coming towards us without additional funding. It'd be the same capitated amount of money we get. We wouldn't get what they're getting. We would just absorb them. So I'm watching that very closely.
Do you have any idea on timing of that? I mean, we're getting to the end of
October.
an administration, and it seems.
They want it up and running in October. So, one of the things it did say is that the health plans are supposed to pay for psychiatric hospitalization for people that are moderate conditions. We're paying for that now. That's about $1 million in the last, since June, of expenditures. So if they actually paid for that, that'd be good. But as soon as they get out of the hospital, they'll be deemed severe enough to come to us. So we might get a temporary relief on the inpatient budget, but then we're absorbing a new group. And just because someone requires hospitalization doesn't mean they're severe and persistently mentally ill. And so we're watching that. But on our new inpatient data thing I showed you before, we know exactly how many people from health plans that we're paying for. And it's about $1 million of expenditures we've used. It's increased since June of last year. Remember, we put in a new EMR, so now we can track all this stuff. And so that could be a potential savings, but we're going to see the impact of that. I'm sure the health plans are not looking forward to paying for that. So if I'm them, I'm like, no, we're not. So there's a lot of work to do. I think all the intentions are good. It's just hard to put different systems together and make them work. So my job is to determine the impact and make the best decisions we can when we're not in control of the framework. It's not something I can do. But it is a major strategic planning item. That's why I brought it up in that context.
Appreciate it.
And then we have two other items, I think. Tom, do you want to talk about the?
Yeah, looking at the calendar, our next scheduled board meeting is on Memorial Day weekend. And it struck me that I'm involved with another organization that every May reschedules its board meeting because it conflicts with Memorial Day as well. And a lot of people were not available. So I thought it would be helpful to look at the calendar to see if it would be worthwhile moving our meeting by 1 week to the 1st of June of May. I'm sorry, the 1st of June. What's the
Memorial Day is,
9th.
is it Memorial Day the 23rd?
Yeah, I think there's another Friday.
Yeah.
There's another Friday, the 29th.
Yeah, I have
First week
it
of the
scheduled for the
29th.
22nd. Is that incorrect?
That's Memorial Day weekend.
That's Memorial Day weekend.
Rescheduled to the 29th.
We could do it on the 29th.
Yeah. Does that work for everyone?
I'm not able to make it to either choice, so.
Okay. Peg, you have a.
Already have my sub set up for the 22nd.
Mhm. Well, who cannot make it on the 22nd?
Sub works and
I can't make it on 22nd. You can.
I don't want to run a meeting.
You get a super vote then.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the question, do we have
We
a
have a
quorum
quorum.
for the 22nd?
Beg pardon?
Will we have a quorum? That's the question. For either one.
7 for quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What date are we counting? The 22nd?
You can be on the
I can be there
22nd.
the 22nd.
Theoretically, we should.
Yeah,
It'll
I
be-
can.
It'll be
Robin.
tight.
I can make it.
I probably can. 95%.
So we'll, we'll have 6, possibly 7. Oh, you'll be here too, David. right?
sure.
Yeah.
So we don't know Bonnie.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Like, we got
6,
Bonnie,
7.
yeah.
7, maybe 8.
Yeah. Maybe Robin.
Mhm. Okay.
We could keep it and then have Amanda poll people, as we get closer to make sure.
Yeah, as long as we have enough time to repost.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know, how long do we need to do
Do we
that?
need to
We don't have to repost it unless we're rescheduling.
we only need what?
Yeah.
2 days?
Yeah,
to
2,
repost?
3 days. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Oh,
Tim,
okay,
but-
yeah.
Well, would anybody have
Oh,
trouble on the
that sounds
29th?
2.
Oh, we have
We
2,
don't.
so we're, it's even
About
then
the
in
same,
terms of
yeah.
I know.
1 week versus the.
Welcome back, Dave.
I tell you. Dave's appointed. Hey, run to the next meeting. So should we just keep it the same for now and then?
Sure.
Give me my guess.
And then, Michael, you were.
Yeah, so with PQI, my mother, who's 83 years old, told me that I have to be in Boston this Mother's Day, or I'm on the list. Okay. I got I'm getting older, son, can please come. So I'm, the Monday after Mother's Day is our PQI meeting.
Right.
And we pulled to see if we could move it to the Wednesday instead of Monday at the same time. And I think we were okay. So we're just letting you know that we're going to we'll announce it, move that date. Also, Anna's going to be at a director's, what do we call that, retreat? Yeah, at that same time, a forum, whatever. So either one of us couldn't be there. And so I was happy that we could move the date, but it is totally my mother's fault, just so you know. And she watches these, so yes, Mom. But, well, I got I'm not gonna live much longer, that whole thing. And she's gonna outlive everybody, like in humanity. So I said I would be there. I'm not flying though, I'm driving because with all the airline crap, I'm not doing that. I won't make it, put that way. So that's what that is that we're gonna move PQI. We'll make the formal announcement for that day, and I appreciate people's flexibility.
So just to clarify, we're staying on May 22, but you are going to send out a different poll when we get closer?
Yes.
What was the second part? What was the UR?
Another poll.
Amanda's got.
I thought I heard we're staying.
We're
the
just,
22nd.
we're just gonna ensure that we have a quorum.
Thank you, Amanda.
That's all.
Okay, any general information, comments, or meetings attended? We start.
Yeah, a few things.
LRE.
Yeah, we had an LRE meeting. Dave and I participated along with Michael. We had a strategic planning meeting. One of the encouraging things, Michael's referred to this, is this uniformity thing that came out as recommendation to the new strategic plan. I think is helpful. I also did see that there was a fair amount of support, even though it didn't raise to the top 4 things, for us to at least address this unanimous vote
Yes.
bylaw. that, you know, you can't really move anything unless you have a unanimous vote amongst all 5 members. So there's some indication that we're willing to look at that going forward because it tends to hamstring us. And because some of the counties get different benefit by different model and whatnot. So,
There are certain aspects of operations, like how the funding is distributed,
right,
that they changed before I got there, they changed the bylaws to require all CMH boards and members to unanimously agree to make a change. Well, they did not require a unanimous vote to do that, but they got it. And Network 180 has been saying for years, I don't agree to this, but they can't change the bylaws without a so finding a way to get out of that, because it's to some CMH's advantages to keep the funding model the same way.
it has specific impact on us at least exploring the needs-based model.
Right.
So I think I was encouraged by that. Obviously, there maintains a focus on the residential rate calculator and uniformity along those things. Again, I did find out that we're an oversight board and not a policy board. And so that does tend to, and I do believe we have good leadership, Mary. But that does tend to put us more into like, to try and get away from the rubber stamping. We want to be able to change some of the bylaws, okay? Aside from that, the Board of Commissioners have a vote as to whether to put the millage renewal on the ballot this Thursday at 9 o'clock at the Fillmore Complex. We are hoping that we will be able to be on the August 8th ballot. We have been holding back on any kind of any push for anything in terms of education or letting people know what's going on until we get that vote. And then there will be any number of venues, Michael talking on the radio, any number of venues where education about the millage will be hosted. And so that fits nicely with the next day being Mental Health Awareness Day. So I encourage any questions or support going forward, just let us know. Hopefully we can renew and restore.
I have a question for you, Bob.
Yeah.
How will you be handling the expenses of the millage outreach?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, the CMH agency can't undertake any expenses towards that, but are you
Absolutely.
accepting donations?
We are accepting donations. Yes, we are.
To whom would someone send a donation?
To the Friends of CMH, and I will send you that link.
Great.
Yeah, we're very clear that the CMH recipient agencies cannot utilize any of their on-the-clock time or any of their funding to promote the renewal. So they can endorse us, I think, but they can't use any of that money. That's taxpayer money.
Okay, going around, any other comments or information?
Just that when we worked on the strategic plan at the LRW this past week, there was an outside facilitator that came in and did it. So we're not pushing our own thing, so to speak. We're able to objectively draw input from everybody. And it's not a one and done kind of thing, not like one meeting and here we go. You know, it's going to be a process of several meetings, but I think I just want to recommend that we do get an outside facilitator like that, because I thought it worked really well.
Yep.
Everybody got their input in.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's it.
I'll go really quick. Just wanted to thank Sylvia for serving as vice chair on the board over the last couple of years. Yeah, I think you did a great job. Happy you're still on the board and serving, but just wanted to say thanks.
I'm just like, Dave, welcome back. It's good to see you
Yeah.
here again.
Okay, any other comments from the board members? If not, we will move to our second round of public comment. Anyone who would like to address the board?
Hello, Krista Mason with Benjamin's Hope. I have a happy update for you today. I'd like to introduce you to Amy Vanderlaan. We've had a longtime CFO, Laura Kuiper, who has been just an extraordinary leader in our community and has worked beautifully with us. And she has skipped into retirement with great joy. And so we're welcoming Amy. Amy has many years as part of the finance team at Gordon Foods and then moved on to a position of controller at Beacon Hill. So she brings real depth to us and she's learning our alphabet soup, some of it a little different than she had at Beacon Hill, and looks forward to providing you with robust information. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else care to address the board? Anyone online?
No one with their hand raised.
Okay. With that, absent any objection, we will adjourn the meeting.